Hello, it's Dana today with Hampton Art, and today we are going to be making a card using two stamping techniques. The first is a stamp off technique in which I use to make the background, and the second one is an embossing resist with watercolors for the butterflies. First, the supplies that you need are, we need a 8.5 by 11 cardstock. You can actually make two card bases with this. Just cut it to 4.25 by 5.5. And I use craft cardstock. We're going to need some ink, some Studio G, it's kind of a dark pink color, Color Box Frost White Pigment ink, and last a Versamark water stamp pad. We're also going to need our stamps. We're using two sets today. The Jelly Bean Soup Chilled Cucumber set. We're going to be using these two butterflies and the sentiment. And then Echo Park's paper Oh Snap set, and we're going to be using these arrow background. You're also going to need just some basic glue, some white embossing powder, and some scissors, some watercolor paper. I just cut mine to down to a small size, and a heating gun. So we're going to need these. First, we're going to start with our background. Since it's a pigment ink and I want it to dry, so we'll do that first and kind of set it aside while we make our butterflies. So first I'm going to get our background step and just line it up, get it ready, and we're going to use our Color Box Frost White ink, and I'm going to pull out a scrap piece of paper, and for this technique we're just going to ink up our stamp, and then we're going to ink it up onto my scrap piece of paper because this white is very, very juicy. So I don't want a whole lot of ink on my card base. So I'm just going to ink it up, and it's nice and juicy. And I'm going to just stamp it really quick first on my scrap paper, and then I'm going to go onto my scrap base and actually stamp it. Like that. So I'm just going to continue this all across my card, just making sure it's all inked up, stamping off first, and kind of just stamping my row. Some are going to be a little bit taller and some a little shorter, just kind of varying it across my card base. So stamp off. Then do that one there. There's no rhyme or reason, just kind of wherever you want to stamp it, either really tall or really short. You do want to start in the middle and kind of work your way out. There we go. So let's see, do this one. Do it right there. And ink it up again. Stamp it off again. And stamp. Alright, and I just have a little bit there on that side that I want to get. So I just ink up that one side, stamp off. And let's see, nope, I need the other side, because I want to go down. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside to dry, and I'm just going to clean up my mat with the ink. I use baby wipes, and I also use it to clean up my stamps and get all the lovely ink off of it. Alright, that. Alright, so the next we are going to make our butterflies. We'll need our watercolor paper and our butterfly stamps, and they're from the Jelly Bean Chilled Cucumber set. And I'm going to use the medium and the small one. And while I'm here, I'm also going to be using this sentiment, so I'm going to just go and grab that one and use that for later. Okay, so I'm going to grab my block, And I've actually already made a couple when I was making my first card, as you can see here. But for my card, I used 2 big ones and 2 small ones, and I just have 1 big one left. And I'll give you a show how I do this. So I'm going to use the Versamark ink, and I'm going to ink up my butterfly really nice. And then I'm going to stamp it on my watercolor paper. Just like that, make sure it really gets on the watercolor paper. I clean it off real quick. Alright, and then I'm going to also do the small butterfly, just to show you how I colored this guy too. So just stick him right there. Clean him off. Alright. So next I have to use some white embossing powder. Just use a little bit of vellum to catch the powder. Spread it all over my butterfly. Tap it off. And it looks pretty good. So I can just set that down and replace this back into my tube. Okay. Alright, so then I just need to heat the butterflies. Okay, so they're all nice and melted. Give that a second to cool. And next I'm going to need just a little paintbrush and some water. And I just use a little cap and fill it up real quick, because it doesn't take too much water. Alright. And then I just use some basic watercolors. Just a set that I got from, I think Hobby Lobby costs like $5, so, but I really like it. Okay, so I have my big butterfly and my small butterfly. And first I'm going to just add some water all over the butterfly. And just like the ones that I've already did, I'm going to use an orange color in the middle. I pick that up with my paintbrush and just kind of go over the middle part of my butterfly. Get that guy out of the way. Alright, and then I just use kind of a rag to, if my brush is too wet. And then next I'm going to pick up some of this dark pink here, or really I guess more like a dark purpley, and I'm going to kind of put it at the edge of the butterfly wings. Just filling in those spaces kind of in between the embossing. Alright, so then I'm just going to take my paintbrush and kind of mix the colors a little bit here, kind of where they meet. And then to make it just a little darker, I'm going to add more paint. So really it's kind of like just get it to wherever you happen to like it. And I'm not worrying about staying in the lines because I'm going to cut it out. Alright, maybe a little more orange. And then just a little bit dark orange kind of through the middle. Kind of just add a little bit of shading there. Kind of just blend it a little bit. Okay, so that can dry. And I can move on to my little butterfly. And this one I kind of did the opposite and started with the pink in the middle. Just fill that in. And you can see how the watercolor just really resists the embossing that we did. Okay, so then I'm just going to pick up some of that orange for just the little bit of the edge there. There we go. Kind of just smooth it together and just kind of get it to where I like it. So maybe just a little bit orange on this side. Maybe just a little bit in the middle. And just kind of spread this off a little bit. Okay. Alright, so there we've got them colored. And I can put away the watercolors now. Alright, and you can see the ones I've already did here. I've already cut out. But I do need another big one, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that one out. Alright, so I'm just going to go around the very edge. It's okay if you kind of cut into the embossing powder a little bit. It won't hurt it or anything. Okay, so next thing I need to take, this is a really fresh baby white, so it's a little bit better if it was not quite as damp, but the same idea, and you just kind of brush off the watercolor from your embossing, so that way it just leaves the watercolor that's actually on the paper. Kind of just helps brighten that up a little bit. Alright, so there's my second big butterfly. I'm just going to kind of bend them in the middle. You can see all these other ones I've already kind of bent. Alright, so I'm going to take, we've got our card base here, and when I was doing this I just kind of laid them out, played with the layout until I found one that I liked, and I kind of really liked it about here. And then last I had to do a sentiment, so I'm using the Just For You stamp, and I just used a extra piece of craft cardstock. Let's see, I think, yep. And I just used some pigment ink from Studio G. Inked it up pretty good. And this dark purple matched pretty good with the purple in my butterflies. So I just stamp it on my cardstock. Nice and good. And you can see my nice sentiment. And again, being careful not to get any of my wet ink from earlier. Just gonna cut it out real quick. Alright. Okay, so then as for placement, I'm just going to kind of just put it about there, kind of making a little bit of a kind of a triangle circle like. Alright, so I'm going to actually place my sentiment with foam dots. So just place those on the back. Like so. Alright, and then to make sure it's straight as possible, I'm just going to line it up with my mat and kind of get it kind of in the middle here. Yep, and then press it down. And then to adhere my butterflies, I'm just going to use some basic liquid glue. Let's see, it's not too runny and not too thick. And then I just use a little toothpick to get some glue, and I kind of just spread it on the back. And then I'm just going to kind of loosely, lightly place it where I want it. Like that. This one. And that's what I like about using this glue. It's, you can place it down and then still move it around before it's dry. Alright, so place that guy there. And so I can just kind of play with the butterflies to get them just how I want them. And then I can actually kind of press down. And once they're dry, I can come back and kind of lift up the wings. But I want to make sure they're on there pretty good. And there's our card. And as you can see, there's the first one that I made, and then the second one that I just did. So I hope you had fun, and I hope you give this a try. Thanks for joining us here at Hampton Art.